In the vast, ancient floodplains of the late Jurassic, survival was a relentless negotiation between predator and prey. This was a world of giants, where evolutionary pressures forged biological weapons of terrifying efficiency. Here, two icons of prehistory were locked in a timeless conflict, a duel so profound it has been etched into the fossil record itself. Now, let's open the fossil record and resurrect the story of this Jurassic titan. The undisputed apex predator of this world was Allosaurus fragilis, the different lizard. It was a keystone species, a theropod dinosaur whose presence shaped the very fabric of its ecosystem. Reaching lengths of over 9 meters and weighing more than 2 tons, Allosaurus was a formidable hunter. But its true genius lay not in brute force, but in its specialized anatomy. When we analyze its skull, we find a masterpiece of predatory engineering. It was surprisingly light, composed of bones with large openings or fenestrae, which reduced weight without compromising strength. This allowed for a remarkably wide gape, enabling a unique attack strategy. Evidence suggests Allosaurus employed a hatchet bite, using its powerful neck muscles to drive its upper jaw down onto prey, with its serrated, recurved teeth slicing through flesh like blades. These teeth were not designed for crushing bone, but for inflicting deep, catastrophic wounds that would weaken even the largest of herbivores. Its arsenal did not end at its jaws. The 4 limbs of Allosaurus, often overlooked in popular culture, were immensely powerful. Each arm terminated in 3 massive eagle-like talons, perfect for grappling with struggling victims, holding them steady for the killing bite. Its entire chassis was built for the hunt. Powerful hind limbs for pursuit, a long, rigid tail for balance during high-speed maneuvers, and keen senses to locate its next meal across the fern-choked plains of the Morrison Formation. This was not a mindless monster, but a highly adapted killing machine, a product of millions of years of evolution honing the perfect tools for predation on giant prey. And in its world, there was no prey more challenging or more iconic than Stegosaurus stenops. The image of the Stegosaurus is often that of a slow, simple-minded herbivore, a walking paradox of tiny brain and enormous body. But this is a dangerous underestimation. When we examine the fossil evidence, a different picture emerges, one of a superbly defended living fortress. Its famous dorsal plates, a double row of bony osteoderms, were once thought to be armor. However, detailed analysis reveals they were riddled with blood vessels and were likely too fragile for direct combat. Their primary purpose may have been for thermoregulation, or more probably for species recognition and display, a vibrant billboard advertising its health and vitality. The creature's true defense lay at its tail. Here we find a weapon so effective it has been named after a cartoon, the Thagomizer. This quartet of formidable, meter-long spikes was mounted on a muscular, flexible tail that could be swung with incredible speed and precision. This was no passive deterrent. The Stegosaurus was not an animal that would simply wait to be attacked. It was an armed combatant. Fossil discoveries tell a clear story. This was an animal that stood its ground, using its devastating caudal weapon to defend itself against the apex predators of its time. In the Jurassic theater of survival, the unstoppable force of the Allosaurus was destined to meet the immovable object of the Stegosaurus. An encounter between these two was not a matter of if, but when. The narrative of this ancient conflict is not a product of speculation or dramatic fiction. It is written in stone, a story preserved with astonishing clarity in the language of fossils. To read it, we must become detectives,
piecing together the events of a single violent moment that occurred 150 million years ago. Our central piece of evidence comes from the remains of a single Allosaurus, a specimen that carries the undeniable signature of an encounter with a Stegosaurus. When we analyze the pelvic region of this predator, specifically the pubis bone, we find something extraordinary: a deep, conical puncture wound. The hole is not a random break or a post-mortem crack. It is a traumatic injury, a wound that tells a story of a brutal face-to-face confrontation. The size and shape of this aperture match with chilling precision the dimensions of a Stegosaurus Thagomizer spike. This is the smoking gun of the Jurassic, a direct hit frozen in time. The location of the injury is profoundly revealing. A strike to the pelvis would have been debilitating, a blow aimed at the very core of the predator's power and mobility. We can use this single piece of forensic data to reconstruct the terrifying dynamics of the duel. The Allosaurus, likely employing its established hunting strategy, would have initiated the attack. Perhaps it attempted a flanking maneuver, using its agility to get past the swinging tail and deliver a crippling bite to the hindquarters or neck. It would have lunged, its powerful talons extended to grapple the immense flank of the herbivore, its jaws gaping for that signature hatchet bite. But the Stegosaurus was not a passive victim. In a desperate defensive pivot, it would have swung its powerful tail, not randomly, but with targeted intent. The Allosaurus, committed to its attack and perhaps momentarily off balance, would have been caught in the arc of this medieval weapon. The impact would have been immense, a meter-long spike of solid bone propelled by a tail of pure muscle driving deep into the underside of the Allosaurus. The force required to puncture bone in this manner speaks to the incredible power the Stegosaurus could generate. This was not a glancing blow, it was a direct, impaling strike that would have caused immediate, agonizing pain and massive internal damage. We can almost feel the shock of the impact, the predator's roar of aggression turning into one of pain and surprise, its attack completely thwarted. This single fossil wound allows us to visualize the brutal reality of these encounters. The fight would have been a chaotic dance of death, with the agile predator probing for an opening while the armored herbivore created a lethal no-go zone around its body. One miscalculation, one moment of hesitation on the part of the Allosaurus was all it took for the tables to turn so violently. What happened next for this particular Allosaurus is a matter of careful interpretation. When we examine the edges of the wound under magnification, we see signs of bone remodeling. This is crucial. It tells us that the wound was not immediately fatal. The Allosaurus survived the initial encounter. It managed to disengage, to limp away from the battlefield, the Thagomizer spike having been ripped free during the struggle. But survival did not mean recovery. The bone shows clear evidence of a massive infection, a condition known as osteomyelitis. The puncture would have introduced a host of bacteria deep into the animal's body. And in a world without antibiotics, such a deep-seated infection would have been a death sentence. Day by day, the infection would have spread, weakening the once mighty predator. Its hunting prowess would have diminished, its strength sapped by fever and chronic pain. Ultimately, this Allosaurus did not die from the spike itself, but from its septic aftermath. It was a slow, agonizing demise, a testament to the fact that even for the apex predator of the Jurassic, a single failed hunt could be fatal. This one fossil transforms our understanding. shifting the dynamic from a simple predator-prey relationship to a high-stakes duel between two incredibly well-armed combatants.
The story of this one injured Allosaurus is more than a tale of a single brutal duel. It is a snapshot of a much grander dynamic, a process that unfolded over millions of years, an evolutionary arms race. This concept is fundamental to understanding life in the Jurassic. For every adaptation a predator develops, prey evolves a counter-adaptation. The result is a perpetual cycle of one-upsmanship, a biological Cold War that drives the engine of evolution and shapes entire ecosystems. The conflict between Allosaurus and Stegosaurus is a textbook example of this principle brought to life. The predatory pressures exerted by Allosaurus directly influence the evolution of Stegosaurus. The development and refinement of the Thagomizer was not an accident. It was a specific, highly effective response to the threat posed by large theropods. Only the Stegosaurus individuals with the strongest, sharpest, and most accurately wielded tails would have survived encounters, passing those superior defensive traits on to the next generation. Conversely, the formidable defense of the Stegosaurus placed immense selective pressure back onto the Allosaurus. A lone frontal assault was, as our fossil evidence demonstrates, a potentially fatal gamble. This would have forced Allosaurus to evolve more sophisticated hunting strategies. We can theorize that this may have driven them towards social behavior, hunting in packs to overwhelm the defenses of such a well-armed herbivore. By working together, a group of Allosaurus could create distractions, opening a window for one member to deliver a bite while the Stegosaurus was occupied with another. This predator-prey dynamic became a primary sculptor of both species' anatomy and behavior. The agility and wide gape of the Allosaurus were honed to overcome armored prey, while the armor and weaponry of the Stegosaurus were perfected to repel agile, large-jawed predators. Each was the architect of the other's evolution. This intricate dance was not unique to these two icons. We see this pattern repeated throughout the Mesozoic era. The later Cretaceous period saw a similar arms race unfold.